They warned Earth to obey galactic law until a human captain replied, "That's cute. We have our own Part 1. First Contact and Defiance Captain Rebecca Torres had been in space for 15 years, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. The bridge of the UHSF Horizon's Edge hummed with its usual rhythm when the sensors began screaming warnings that changed everything. 3 massive vessels materialized from the void, each one dwarfing her ship by a factor of 20. They hung in space like ancient monuments, their hulls gleaming with technology humanity could barely comprehend. "Captain, we're being scanned," reported Lieutenant Chen from the tactical station. His voice carried an edge of concern that made every crew member straighten in their seats. "Multiple targeting locks. They're not even trying to hide it." Torres leaned forward, studying the alien ships on her screen. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for generations. First contact with intelligent alien life. But in all their dreams and preparations, nobody had imagined it would feel like staring down the barrel of a gun. "Open all frequencies. Let's say hello properly." The communications officer worked quickly, fingers dancing across her console. Within seconds, a response came through. The main screen flickered and revealed a being that made several crew members gasp audibly. It stood nearly 9 feet tall with a body that seemed carved from living stone. Its skin shimmered between gray and deep blue, covered in what looked like natural armor plates. 4 arms emerged from its torso, each ending in 3-fingered hands, but it was the face that truly captured attention. Large, intelligent eyes of pure gold regarded them with an expression that might have been curiosity or contempt. It was impossible to tell. "Attention, primitive vessel," the alien spoke, and the translation came through instantly in perfect English. "I am High Arbiter Kelvin of the Calvaran Dominion. You are in violation of Galactic Code 7742, unauthorized presence in regulated space. You are in violation of Galactic Code 7743, operating faster than light technology without proper certification. You are in violation of Galactic Code 7744, failing to submit to established authority upon first contact. Power down your vessel immediately and prepare for processing." Torres exchanged glances with her first officer, Commander James Park. He raised an eyebrow that said everything she was thinking. This wasn't first contact. This was an arrest. "High Arbiter Kelvin," Torres replied, keeping her voice level and professional. "I am Captain Rebecca Torres of the United Human Space Federation. We were unaware that this region of space was claimed by any civilization. Our exploration vessels operate under the authority of Earth's unified government. We recognize no laws that we had no part in creating." Kelvin's golden eyes narrowed. His forearms moved in complex gestures that might have been the alien equivalent of surprise or annoyance. "Your awareness is irrelevant. The Calvaran Dominion has governed this sector for 8,000 of your Earth years. All intelligent species discovered within our jurisdiction must submit to Dominion law. This is not a negotiation, it is a statement of fact." "Submit." Torres repeated the word slowly, tasting its implications. "And what exactly does submission entail?" "Your species will immediately cease all independent space exploration," Kelvin stated, each word precise and final. "All human vessels beyond your home system will be recalled and decommissioned. Your faster-than-light technology will be confiscated and studied. A Dominion Oversight Council will be established on your Earth to ensure compliance with galactic standards. Your species will be assigned a classification level and given appropriate limitations on expansion, reproduction, and technological development. These terms are standard. Every species in the galaxy follows them. You are not special." The bridge fell silent except for the soft beeping of various systems. Torres could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. She was a military officer, trained to follow orders and protocols, but she was also human, and humans had spent their entire history fighting against exactly this kind of tyranny. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," Torres said, standing up from her command chair. She walked closer to the screen, meeting Kelvin's golden eyes directly. "You want us to give up our freedom to explore the stars. You want us to surrender our technology. You want us to accept foreign control over our home planet. You want us to limit our own growth and development. And you expect us to agree to all of this simply because you showed up and told us to." "Correct," Kelvin replied. "These are the terms. They are not negotiable." Torres felt a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile humans wore when someone had just made a terrible mistake. "That's cute," she said, and her voice carried across every speaker on the ship. We have our own laws, Arbiter. And our first law is that we bow to nobody who hasn't earned our respect. You appear in our space without warning. You scan our ship with weapons. You make demands like we're children who need to be disciplined. And you expect compliance. She shook her head slowly. You don't know humans very well, do you? Kelvan's expression changed. His forearms tensed and his voice took on a harder edge. You dare refuse the Dominion? Do you understand what you are saying? We have conquered and integrated 473 species. We have technology that predates your civilization by millennia. We have weapons that could reduce your Earth to cosmic dust. You have one small ship in the arrogance of ignorance. This is your only warning, Captain Torres. Submit or face the consequences. Torres crossed her arms, standing firm despite the fear that tried to creep up her spine. Here's the thing about humans, Arbiter. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us constantly. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, ice ages, droughts, you name it. We survived all of it. Then we started fighting each other. We've been at war for our entire recorded history. We've faced extinction dozens of times and somehow we're still here. We split the atom and nearly destroyed ourselves, but we survived that too. She paused, making sure every word landed with impact. So when you come to us with threats and demands, you're not scaring us. You're just making us angry. And trust me, Arbiter, you really don't want to make humans angry. This is your final warning, Kelvin said, his voice now cold as the void between stars. You have 30 of your Earth days to comply with Dominion law. Recall all human vessels, cease all unauthorized expansion, prepare your world for integration. If you refuse, the Dominion will take enforcement action. We will make an example of your species that will be remembered for 1,000 generations. Torres walked back to her command chair and sat down with deliberate calm. Then you'd better bring a lot more ships, Arbiter, because if you want humanity to kneel, you're going to have to break us first. And I promise you, we've been breaking things for 10,000 years. We're very good at it. Kelvin stared at her for a long moment. Then the screen went black. The 3 massive Dominion ships began to move, their engines creating ripples in space-time that made the horizon's edge shudder. Within minutes, they accelerated to impossible speeds and vanished, leaving behind only the fading signature of their jump. The bridge erupted in nervous chatter. Commander Park approached Torres's chair, his face a mixture of admiration and concern. Captain, did we just declare war on an alien empire? Torres took a deep breath, feeling the enormity of what had just happened settling over her. Maybe, James, but what choice did we have? They wanted us to surrender everything that makes us human, our freedom, our independence, our right to reach for the stars. Would you have agreed to that? Park shook his head firmly. No, ma'am, never. Neither would I, Torres replied. She opened the ship-wide communication channel. All hands, this is the captain. What just happened here today will be remembered forever. We met another intelligent species and they demanded our submission. We refused. They may come back with force. They may try to make us regret our choice, but we will face whatever comes together, as humans always have. We didn't come this far just to give up because someone told us to. Send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them first contact has been made. Tell them what happened. And tell them to prepare for war. As the horizon's edge turned toward home, Torres stared at the starfield where the Dominion ships had been. She had just defied an empire that had ruled for 8,000 years. She had probably started a war that humanity wasn't ready to fight. But she had also stood up for every principle that humanity held dear. Freedom wasn't free. It never had been. Throughout human history, every generation had to fight for it in their own way. Now it was humanity's turn to fight for freedom on a galactic stage. And if the Calvoran Dominion thought humans would surrender without a fight, they were about to learn the most painful lesson in their 8,000-year history. The message reached Earth 3 days later, and the world changed forever. The price of freedom. Earth's Emergency Council met within hours of receiving Captain Torres's message. Representatives from every nation gathered in the United Assembly Hall in Geneva. Their faces projected on massive screens for all of humanity to see. President Elena Vasquez of the Unified Earth Government stood at the central podium, her hands gripping the edges as she addressed not just the Council, but the entire planet. Citizens of Earth, we face a choice that will define our species for all time. An alien empire has given us 30 days to surrender our freedom or face their military might. Captain Torres refused their demands. Now we must decide if we stand with her or bow to alien rule. The debate raged for 18 hours straight. Some argued for compromise, for finding a middle ground that might avoid bloodshed. Others insisted that no compromise was possible with beings who treated humanity as children to be disciplined. Scientists presented data about the Dominion's superior technology. Military leaders discussed the impossibility of fighting ships they barely understood. Economists worried about the cost of total war. But in the end, the vote was nearly unanimous. Humanity would not submit. The next 27 days became the most intense period of preparation in human history. Every shipyard in the solar system switched to military production. The massive orbital platforms around Earth, Mars, and Jupiter that had been building colony ships and cargo haulers began constructing warships instead. Scientists worked around the clock analyzing every piece of data from the Horizon's Edge encounter, searching for any weakness in Dominion technology. Military forces worldwide mobilized with a speed that surprised even their own commanders. The asteroid belt became a hive of activity as mining operations extracted materials at unprecedented rates. On day 30, the Dominion returned. High Arbiter Kelvin arrived with 60 massive warships, a fleet that could crack planets and shatter moons. They arranged themselves in a formation that spoke of absolute confidence and centuries of unchallenged dominance. Captain Torres, now promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's defensive fleet, watched them arrive on the tactical display. She stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned UHSF Defiance, humanity's first true battleship. Around her, 200 human vessels waited. They were smaller than the Dominion ships, their weapons less powerful, their shields weaker. But they were crewed by humans who had decided that some things were worth dying for. Kelvin's face appeared on every screen across the fleet. Humans, your time has expired. Have you reconsidered your foolish defiance? Will you submit to Dominion authority and spare yourselves unnecessary suffering? Torres activated her communication channel, broadcasting not just to Kelvin but to every human ship and every watching soul on Earth. High Arbiter Kelvin, this is Admiral Rebecca Torres. You came to our home system. You threatened our people. You demanded we surrender our freedom. We have only one response to that. She paused, and her next words would be quoted for generations. Come and take it. The Battle of Earth began with a fury that shocked the Dominion forces. Human ships didn't arrange themselves in orderly formations. They scattered like a swarm of insects, attacking from every angle at once. Small fighters darted between the massive Dominion vessels, targeting their weapon systems with precision strikes. Larger frigates used the gravity of the moon to slingshot themselves at impossible velocities, ramming into Dominion shields with devastating force. Nothing in the Dominion's 8,000 years of conquest had prepared them for this chaos. Kelvin watched in disbelief as human vessels attacked with tactics that defied every rule of proper warfare. They used their own damaged ships as decoys. They hid behind asteroids and struck without warning. They flew in erratic patterns that made targeting calculations impossible. When Dominion forces tried to use their superior firepower, human ships simply scattered and reformed elsewhere. What are they doing? Demanded Kelvin's tactical officer, a Calvaran veteran of 50 campaigns. They fight without formation, without order. This is madness. They're fighting like they have nothing to lose, Kelvin replied, his voice tight with frustration. He had seen species resist before, but never like this. Never with such complete disregard for their own survival. A human destroyer, its hull breached and leaking atmosphere, turned directly toward his flagship. Its captain's last transmission was broadcast across all channels. Remember the Alamo? Remember Thermopylae? Remember Stalingrad? The ship rammed into the Dominion flagship's shields at full speed, and the explosion that followed sent shockwaves through half the fleet. The battle raged for 11 hours. By the time it ended, 97 human ships had been destroyed. Their crews, nearly 40,000 souls, had given everything for their species' freedom. But the Dominion had lost 23 vessels, and another 31 were severely damaged. Kelvin ordered a retreat, something no Dominion arbiter had done in recorded history. As his battered fleet jumped away, he sent a message back to the Dominion Council that would change everything. Send reinforcements. Send many reinforcements. These humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They do not fear death. They embrace it if it serves their cause. This will not be an easy conquest. On Earth, the victory celebration was muted. Yes, they had forced the Dominion to retreat. Yes, they had proven that humanity could fight, but the cost had been terrible. 40,000 families mourned their dead, 40,000 empty chairs at dinner tables, 40,000 lives sacrificed for freedom. Admiral Torres addressed the planet again, her face showing the weight of command. Today we proved that humanity will not bow to tyrants no matter how powerful they may be. We lost friends, family, and heroes. Their sacrifice will never be forgotten, but this is only the beginning. The Dominion will return with more ships, more weapons, more determination. We must be ready. We must be stronger, and we must remember what we're fighting for. Not just our survival, but our right to be free. Over the following months, the war spread across human space. The Dominion sent fleets to isolated human colonies expecting easy victories. Instead, they found colonists who had turned their mining equipment into weapons, their habitats into fortresses, and their determination into an unbreakable will to resist. Every battle cost the Dominion more ships, more resources, and more importantly, more confidence. Other species in the galaxy began to take notice. For 8,000 years, the Dominion had been unchallenged. Now a young species barely a century into space travel was fighting them to a standstill. Whispers spread through the galactic community. Questions were asked. If humans could resist, why couldn't others? Admiral Torres led humanity's forces with a combination of military brilliance and deep understanding of human nature. She knew humanity couldn't win through superior technology or overwhelming force. Instead, she used humanity's greatest weapons, adaptability, creativity, and sheer stubborn refusal to quit. She studied every battle in human history and applied those lessons to space combat. She used strategies from ancient naval warfare, tactics from guerrilla campaigns, and psychological operations that confused and demoralized Dominion forces. Most importantly, she made sure every human in the conflict understood why they were fighting. This wasn't just about survival. This was about proving that intelligence and determination could overcome raw power, that freedom was worth any sacrifice, that humanity would rather die standing than live kneeling. 6 months after the first battle, the diplomatic channels finally opened. But it wasn't the Dominion that reached out first. It was other species, races that had submitted to Dominion rule generations ago and now wondered if submission had been necessary. They sent secret messages to Earth, asking how humanity had resisted, sharing information about Dominion weaknesses, and quietly cheering for the upstart species that dared to say no. The galaxy was changing, and humanity's defiance was the catalyst. A new galactic order. The Calvoran Dominion Council chamber was a place of ancient power and unquestioned authority. For 8,000 years, decisions made within these walls had shaped the destiny of hundreds of species across thousands of worlds. High Arbiter Kelvin stood before the Supreme Council, his forearms hanging with exhaustion and shame. Around him, holographic projections showed the reality that no Dominion leader wanted to acknowledge. The war with humanity was going badly, very badly. Supreme Counselor Tharn, eldest of the Calvoran leaders, spoke with a voice that carried the weight of millennia. Explain, High Arbiter, how a single primitive species has cost us 300 warships, damaged our reputation throughout the galaxy, and inspired rebellion in 17 of our client worlds. Explain how 8,000 years of dominance is now questioned because of these humans. Kelvin had prepared for this moment, but preparation didn't make it easier. Supreme Counselor, we underestimated them in every possible way. We assumed that superior technology would guarantee victory. We were wrong. Humans don't fight like civilized species. They fight like the universe itself is trying to kill them. Because for their entire evolutionary history it was. They evolved on a death world with extreme gravity, violent weather, and predators at every level of the food chain. They survived by becoming the most dangerous predators of all. He activated a holographic display showing human battle tactics. Watch this engagement at the Proxima colony. We sent 40 ships against 10 human vessels. By every calculation, we should have won in minutes. Instead, look what happened. The humans scattered immediately, refusing to form defensive positions. They used the colony's orbital platforms as shields, forcing us to either destroy civilian infrastructure or hold back our fire. They deployed makeshift mines made from cargo containers filled with explosives. They hacked into our communication frequencies and played recordings from their history, battles where outnumbered forces defeated superior enemies. It was psychological warfare combined with physical combat. We destroyed 8 of their ships, but we lost 15 of ours and withdrew in confusion. Another counselor, Valora of the diplomatic caste spoke up. Surely their primitive nature makes them vulnerable to reason. Have we attempted genuine negotiation rather than demands? We have tried, Counselor, Kelvin replied. But humans have a concept they call freedom that seems to override all rational calculation. They would rather die than submit to authority they didn't choose. Their history is filled with examples of small groups fighting impossible odds purely for the concept of liberty. They have a saying, "Give me liberty or give me death." They actually mean it. The council chamber fell silent as the full implications settled over the ancient leaders. Finally, Supreme Counselor Tharn spoke again. "What do you recommend, High Arbiter?" "Negotiation," Kelvin said, the word heavy in his mouth. "But not the kind we've offered before. True negotiation between equals. The humans have proven they can't be conquered, not without destroying them completely. And if we do that, every other species in the galaxy will know that the Dominion's choice is submit or die. That knowledge will destroy everything we've built. Some species accepted our rule because they believed we were benevolent. If we genocide the humans, that illusion ends forever." The debate in the council lasted for days. Meanwhile, in human space, Admiral Torres was preparing for what she believed would be the final battle. Intelligence reports indicated that the Dominion was gathering the largest fleet in its history, over 1,500 warships. They were coming to Earth itself, and this time they wouldn't hold back. Humanity had 800 ships, every vessel they could build or convert to military use. The odds were terrible. The outcome seemed inevitable. But Torres had one more card to play. "Open a broadcast to all known species in the galaxy," Torres ordered. "I don't care if the Dominion intercepts it. In fact, I want them to hear this." When the communication channels opened, she began to speak. "My name is Admiral Rebecca Torres of the United Human Space Federation. For 6 months, my species has been at war with the Calvoran Dominion. They came to us with demands that we surrender our freedom, our independence, and our right to chart our own destiny. We refused. Since then, we've lost hundreds of thousands of our people, fighting for a principle that every intelligent being should understand: the right to be free." She paused, letting her words spread across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. "I'm told that the Dominion governs 473 species. I wonder how many of those species chose to be governed. How many were given a real choice? How many submitted because they believed they had no other option? Well, humanity is here to tell you that there is always another option. You can fight. You can resist. You can stand up and say no to those who claim authority over you without earning it. Yes, it's hard. Yes, you might lose. But at least you'll lose as free beings rather than living as slaves who forgot they were slaves." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, species that had accepted Dominion rule for generations began to stir. Some sent messages of support to Earth. Others began quiet acts of resistance in their own systems. A few, inspired by humanity's example, openly declared their independence. The galaxy that the Dominion had controlled for 8,000 years was awakening, and the awakening was spreading like wildfire. When the Dominion fleet finally arrived at Earth, it was met by an unexpected sight. Alongside humanity's 800 ships stood vessels from 47 other species. Some were former Dominion clients who had declared independence. Others were neutral powers who had decided that the principle of freedom was worth defending. Together, they outnumbered the Dominion fleet. High Arbiter Kelvan looked at the assembled armada and knew that the age of the Dominion's unchallenged rule had ended. The communication came from the human flagship. "High Arbiter Kelvin, this is Admiral Torres. I'm standing here with representatives from 47 different species. We're all here for the same reason. We believe that no civilization has the right to rule others without consent. We believe that freedom is the birthright of all intelligent life. And we believe that your Dominion, for all its age and power, has forgotten these basic truths. So here's our offer. Stand down. Retreat. Go back to your council and tell them that the galaxy has changed. Tell them that humanity didn't just fight for our own freedom. We fought for the principle that freedom belongs to everyone." The standoff lasted for 3 days. The Dominion fleet held position while emergency communications flowed back and forth between Kelvin and the Supreme Council. Finally, the decision came. The Dominion would negotiate, not from a position of absolute power, but as one civilization among many. The talks took months. They were difficult, contentious, and required compromises from all sides. But in the end, a new galactic order emerged. The Calvoran Dominion would continue to exist, but as a voluntary association of species rather than an enforced empire. Any species could choose to join or leave. Laws would be created collectively, rather than imposed from above. And at the heart of the new Galactic Charter was a document heavily influenced by human philosophy called the Declaration of Galactic Rights. Admiral Rebecca Torres stood before the reformed Galactic Assembly 1 year after that first encounter with Kelvin. She represented Earth and humanity, but also something larger. She represented the idea that had changed everything. "We didn't start this conflict wanting to destroy the Dominion," she told the assembled representatives of 600 species. "We started it wanting to be free. Along the way, we learned that freedom isn't just a human concept. It's universal. Every intelligent being wants to control their own destiny. Every species wants to grow and explore without arbitrary limitations. And every civilization deserves the right to make their own choices, even if those choices lead to mistakes." She looked directly at Kelvin, who now represented the Calvaran people as an equal member of the Assembly, rather than as their supreme arbiter. "High Arbiter Kelvin told me once that humans were not special." He was right. We're not special. We're just stubborn. We're just willing to fight for what we believe in. And apparently, that stubbornness was exactly what the galaxy needed. So here we are, 600 species working together, not because one forced the others, but because we chose to. That's the difference. That's what makes this new order worth building. The assembly erupted in sounds of approval from hundreds of different species. On Earth, billions watched the broadcast and celebrated. They had paid a terrible price for their freedom, but that price had purchased something precious. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through submission, but through defiance. Not by following someone else's rules, but by insisting on the right to help write new ones. Captain Torres, the woman who had looked at an 8,000-year-old empire and said, "That's cute. We have our own laws," had become the voice of a new galactic age. Years later, human children would learn about the first contact war in their schools. They would study Admiral Torres's tactics, Kelvin's mistakes, and the brave souls who gave their lives for freedom. But more importantly, they would learn the lesson that their species had taught the galaxy, that freedom is worth fighting for, that no civilization, no matter how old or powerful, has the right to rule others without consent, and that sometimes the most important thing you can say to tyranny is simply, "No, we have our own laws." The galaxy would never be the same. And humanity, the young upstart species that refused to kneel, had ensured that it changed for the better. The human problem, the Calvaran diplomatic vessel, approached Earth 5 years after the reformation of the Galactic Assembly. Ambassador Kelvin, no longer a high arbiter but now representing his people as an equal voice among many, stood at the observation deck watching the blue-green planet grow larger. Beside him stood his human liaison, Commander David Okonkwo, a veteran of the First Contact War who now served in Earth's diplomatic corps. "Nervous?" Okonkwo asked with a slight smile. Kelvin's forearms moved in a gesture that humans had learned meant uncertainty. "I destroyed 17 of your ships during the war. I ordered attacks that killed thousands of your people. And now I'm coming to Earth as an honored guest. Your species continues to confuse me." "We're practical," Okonkwo replied. "You were following orders from a system you believed was right. When you learned otherwise, you changed. That's all we ask from anyone. Besides, holding grudges is exhausting. We prefer to move forward." He paused, then added with a grin, "Though I'll admit my grandmother still won't say your name without adding a curse word after it. She lost a son at the Battle of Mars." Kelvin turned his golden eyes toward the human. "I am sorry for your family's loss." "I know," Okonkwo said simply. "That's why you're here, isn't it? To understand us better?" "To understand the problem you represent," Kelvin corrected. "The Assembly sent me because I have more experience with humans than any other Calvaran. They believe I might help solve what they're calling the human problem." Okonkwo laughed, a sound Kelvin had learned to recognize as genuine amusement rather than mockery. "The human problem. That's what they're calling it? Ambassador, you're going to have to explain this one." As their shuttle descended toward the landing pad in New Geneva, Kelvin explained the situation that had brought him back to Earth. In the 5 years since the Reformation, humanity had become the most disruptive force in galactic politics, not through aggression or warfare, but through something far more dangerous to the old order. Ideas. Humans asked questions that other species had stopped asking centuries ago. They challenged assumptions that had been accepted as truth for millennia. They proposed solutions that seemed impossible until someone actually tried them. And, most troubling of all, other species were starting to think like humans. The Calvoran delegation was received with full diplomatic honors. President Vasquez, now in her second term, greeted them warmly in the Grand Assembly Hall. Ambassador Kelvin, welcome to Earth. I understand you're here to discuss what the galaxy is calling the human problem. I have to admit, we're rather curious about what problem we're causing now. We thought starting a rebellion against an 8,000-year-old empire was our biggest offense. Kelvin settled into the specially designed chair that accommodated his larger frame. Around the conference table sat representatives from Earth's various governments, military leaders including Admiral Torres, and scientists who had been working on joint projects with other species. President Vasquez, the problem is not one of aggression or violation of laws. It is more fundamental than that. Humans are changing the galaxy too quickly, and the Assembly is concerned about stability. Admiral Torres leaned forward, her eyes sharp. Ambassador, you're going to have to be more specific. What exactly are we doing that's causing problems? Kelvin activated a holographic display that showed various incidents across the galaxy. 3 months ago, human engineers working with the Thelian people suggested a modification to their planetary terraforming process. The Thelians had been using the same method for 2,000 years. The human suggestion increased efficiency by 40% and reduced cost by half. Within weeks, 17 other species demanded to know why they hadn't been offered similar improvements. It revealed that the Dominion's old system had been deliberately inefficient to maintain control over terraforming resources. He switched to another image. 4 months ago, a human philosopher named Dr. Sarah Okafor published a paper questioning the Assembly's voting structure. She pointed out that species with smaller populations had proportionally less representation. Her paper has sparked a movement across the galaxy demanding voting reform. 12 species have already threatened to leave the Assembly if changes aren't made. More images followed, each showing a different example. Human doctors revolutionizing medical practices, human artists introducing new forms of expression that other species found liberating, human educators questioning ancient teaching methods, human engineers solving problems that had been considered unsolvable, human diplomats forming alliances based on mutual benefit rather than traditional power structures. Do you see the pattern? Kelvin asked. Everywhere humans go, they question everything. They assume nothing is permanent or unchangeable. They believe every problem has a solution if you think about it differently, and other species are learning this attitude from you. The old certainties that held the galaxy together for thousands of years are being challenged daily. President Vasquez listened carefully, then smiled. Ambassador Kelvin, forgive my bluntness, but this doesn't sound like a problem. This sounds like progress. Progress without stability leads to chaos, Kelvin replied. The Assembly has existed for 8,000 years because species learned to accept their place in the order of things. Now humans have taught everyone that their place can change, should change, must change. You have created a galaxy of questioners and rebels. Admiral Torres stood up and walked to the holographic display. She studied the images of human influence spreading across the stars. Ambassador, let me tell you a story from human history. About 600 years ago, there was a period on Earth called the Renaissance. It was a time when humans started questioning everything they had been taught. Art, science, religion, government, everything was suddenly open to examination and challenge. The old powers were terrified because their authority was based on people not asking questions. But that period of questioning led to incredible advances. We went from believing Earth was the center of the universe to understanding our true place in the cosmos. We developed the scientific method. We created new forms of government based on human rights rather than divine authority. Yes, it was chaotic. Yes, it was uncomfortable, but it was necessary. She turned to face Kelvin directly. The galaxy is having its renaissance, Ambassador. And yes, humans started it, but we didn't do it maliciously. We did it because we see unnecessary suffering and we want to fix it. We see inefficiency and we want to improve it. We see injustice and we want to correct it. That's not a problem. That's who we are. A Calvoran junior diplomat spoke up, his voice uncertain. But Admiral Torres, there must be limits. If everyone questions everything constantly, how can any civilization function? How can we maintain order? It was Commander Okonkwo who answered. You maintain order through consent and mutual benefit, not through enforced compliance. Look, I understand your concern. Change is scary. But the alternative is stagnation. The Dominion maintained order for 8,000 years, but at what cost? How many species never reached their full potential because they were locked into roles assigned to them millennia ago? How many problems went unsolved because everyone assumed they were unsolvable? How many individuals never discovered their talents because their society told them they had to fit a certain mold? The discussions continued for 3 days. The Calvoran delegation presented evidence of social upheaval, political instability, and economic disruption caused by human influence. The Earth representatives acknowledged these challenges, but argued they were growing pains necessary for real progress. On the 3rd day, President Vasquez proposed a solution that would become known as the Humanity Accords. Ambassador Kelvan, I understand the Assembly's concerns about stability, but I also know that trying to suppress human nature would be impossible and ultimately destructive, so here's what Earth proposes. We'll establish the Galactic Institute for Progressive Studies, a joint organization where humans and other species can work together on innovations and reforms. But before any major change is implemented galaxy-wide, it will be thoroughly tested and evaluated. We'll create a system where change happens deliberately rather than chaotically. Progress with planning. Kelvin considered this carefully, and if a species doesn't want to participate, if they prefer their traditional ways, then they have that right, Vasquez replied firmly. Freedom includes the freedom to change slowly or not at all. We won't force progress on anyone, but we also won't stop sharing our ideas with those who want to hear them. That's the compromise. Structured innovation with voluntary adoption. The proposal made its way through the Galactic Assembly over the following months. It sparked fierce debates between progressive species who welcomed human influence and conservative species who feared it. In the end, the Humanity Accords passed with a 73% approval rating. The Galactic Institute for Progressive Studies was established on a neutral world, with representatives from 200 species including both humans and Calvorans. But the real test came 6 months later when the Zintharian Collective, a powerful and ancient species, filed a formal complaint. The Zintharians had existed for 12,000 years and had changed very little in that time. They viewed themselves as the pinnacle of evolution and civilization. Human influence on their youth was causing what they called cultural contamination. Young Zintharians were questioning traditions that had existed for millennia. Some were leaving their homeworld to explore the galaxy. Others were proposing reforms to Zintharian society that the elders found horrifying. The Zintharian ambassador, an ancient being named Quareth who had lived for 3,000 years, addressed the assembly with barely contained anger. Humanity has existed for a fraction of a moment in galactic terms, yet they presume to teach species far older than themselves. Their arrogance knows no bounds. They spread their chaotic philosophy like a disease, infecting stable societies with dangerous ideas about individual freedom and constant change. This must stop. Admiral Torres, now serving as Earth's primary representative to the Assembly, rose to respond. The chamber fell silent. Her reputation as the woman who had defied the Dominion and sparked a galactic revolution gave her words weight. Ambassador Quareth, I respect your species' age and accomplishments. 12,000 years of continuous civilization is remarkable, but I must ask you a question. In those 12,000 years, how much have you changed? How much have you grown? How much have you learned? Quareth's response was immediate and proud. We achieved perfection 8,000 years ago. There was no need for further change. Perfection, Torres repeated softly. Ambassador, humanity is barely 40,000 years old as a species. We've had civilization for about 10,000 years. In that time, we've changed constantly. We've made terrible mistakes and learned from them. We've created and destroyed and created again. We've nearly wiped ourselves out multiple times. And through all of that, we learned one crucial truth that I'll share with you now. She paused, looking around the chamber at representatives from 600 species. There is no such thing as perfection. There is only continuous improvement or stagnation, and stagnation is just another word for death. Your young people are leaving Zintharian space not because humans corrupted them, but because they recognize something their elders forgot. That growth and change are fundamental to life itself. We didn't teach them to question. We just reminded them that questioning is natural. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species applauded Torres's words. Others condemned them as dangerous philosophy. But in the back of the chamber, A young Xantharian who had snuck in to watch the proceedings recorded everything on a device she would later share across her homeworld. The words of the human admiral would spark a movement among Xantharian youth that would eventually transform their entire civilization. As the session ended, Kelvin approached Torres. "You do realize you just created more chaos, not less?" Torres smiled. "I created opportunity for those who want it. The Xantharians who love their traditional ways can keep them, but those who want something different now know they're not alone. That's not chaos, Ambassador. That's freedom. And if their society tears itself apart from internal conflict, then they'll rebuild something better. That's what humans do. That's what any living civilization should do. Ambassador, you asked me once why humanity couldn't just accept our place in the galactic order. The answer is simple. We don't believe in a fixed order. We believe in a growing, changing, improving order. And yes, that's uncomfortable. Yes, that's challenging. But it's also alive." Kelvin looked at the human admiral, this small being from a young species that had somehow changed the galaxy in just 5 years. "The human problem," he said quietly. "I came here to find a solution. Instead, I've realized that humanity isn't a problem to be solved. You're a force of nature, like a storm that can't be stopped, only adapted to." "I'll take that as a compliment," Torres replied. "It was meant as an observation," Kelvin said, "but I suppose in human terms it might also be a compliment. The galaxy will never be the same because of your species. I'm still uncertain whether that's a good thing or a catastrophe waiting to happen." Torres looked out at the stars visible through the assembly chamber's transparent dome. "Ambassador, in human history, every major change looked like a catastrophe to someone. The invention of agriculture, the Industrial Revolution, the Information Age, the development of faster-than-light travel. Every single one was called the end of civilization by those who benefited from the old ways. But humanity survived and thrived. The galaxy will too." As Kelvin departed Earth to return to his homeworld, he carried with him a new understanding. The human problem wasn't something to be solved or contained. It was something to be accepted and adapted to. Humanity had taught the galaxy that change was not only possible but necessary. And that lesson, once learned, could never be unlearned. The old galaxy of fixed hierarchies and unchanging traditions was gone forever. In its place was emerging something new, chaotic, frightening, and full of possibility. A galaxy where every species, no matter how old or young, could question, grow, and change. It was, Kelvin had to admit, very much like the humans themselves. Imperfect, challenging, frustrating, and absolutely vital to a universe that had been sleeping for far too long.